Who is paying rent in your headspace? Hello, welcome to Clear Vision, where today I'm going to be diving into the fascinating and introspective topic of who is paying rent in your headspace. We'll explore what this means, why it matters, and how to evict those unwanted tenants who are occupying your mental and emotional energy. So if you're ready to reclaim your mind and improve your well-being, let's get started. What does it mean? What does the phrase mean to be paying rent in your headspace? So often we hear this in reverse. They're in your headspace, but they're not paying rent. So this is where we're going with it. Who's paying rent in your headspace? And this is referring to the thoughts, the memories, and the emotions that occupy your mind to do with someone else. And these can be people, they can also be past experiences, worries, or even negative self-talk that takes up mental space and energy. And just like a tenant in an apartment, these thoughts can either contribute positively to your life or drain your resources without giving you anything back. So try and think about it this way. Your headspace is prime real estate land, okay? You would not let someone live in your home rent-free if they were causing you stress, anxiety, or pain, yeah? Yet, we often allow harmful thoughts and unresolved issues to occupy our minds without realizing the impact they're having upon us. So this concept encourages us to take stock of who or what is taking up our mental space and to evaluate whether or not they deserve to be there. So, identifying who or what is occupying your headspace. I don't know why I'm clapping. Right. So, who's paying rent in your headspace? Or what? This is a crucial step because the awareness is the first step towards real change. So reflect on the thoughts that frequently pop up in your mind. Are they related to a specific person, such as a critical parent? You could have a demanding boss in there, an ex-partner, a colleague, a friend, someone you've even met on the street and you've had an altercation with. Is it a past mistake or a future worry or a current stressor? Take a few moments, most people know this quite quickly, take a few moments to jot down these reoccurring thoughts or feelings, because writing them down can provide some clarity, and I'm a big fan of writing stuff down, and it can make it easier for you to see patterns. For instance, you may notice that every time you try to relax, thoughts about work invade your peace, or perhaps certain memories from a past relationship keep resurfacing and bringing with them a flood of emotions. So recognizing these patterns, it helps in bringing awareness to what occupies your mental real estate and allows you to assess their impact or its impact on your well-being, because the impact of unwanted tenants on your mental health can be quite huge. And these thoughts can cause anxiety, depression, lack of focus, overthinking, stress. I mean, stress is a big one for a lot of people. Lack of sleep, loss of appetite, anger it can drive as well, frustration, thoughts of retribution, thoughts of injustice. It can begin to cause obsessive thoughts, that was my Cockney accent coming in. It can begin to create obsessive thoughts because you're going round and round and round it. So they drain your emotional energy, literally leaving you feeling exhausted and overwhelmed. For example, constantly thinking about perhaps a past argument with somebody can keep you stuck in a cycle of anger and resentment and prevent you from moving forward. So you need to consider the emotional and physical toll that this takes on you. And often we kind of notice it, but we don't notice it. And it's when, like I say, when you start to write it down, or you maybe speak it out. I mean, I'm also a big fan of another technique here, audio messaging yourself, maybe on WhatsApp or something, as if you're talking to a friend, but you start audio messaging yourself, and then you can kind of get stuff out and notice stuff. Because like I say, it does take a physical and emotional toll on you to have people, situations, past, present, or future, taking up headspace. When your mind is occupied with all of these negative thoughts and all this overthinking and going round and round in circles and circles and cycles and cycles, it can lead to physical symptoms such as headaches, fatigue, chronic pain, even for some people, migraines, and emotionally it can create a sense of really, really being trapped where you feel you can't escape from these thoughts. So then you may well begin to try to avoid certain situations because you know it's going to trigger this cycle of overthinking and spinning things around in your head, which leads to a downward spiral, this kind of downward negative spiral, which affects your relationships, your work, and your overall quality of life. So why do we let these unwanted tenants stay in our headspace, our real estate? And there can be all sorts of reasons, especially psychological reasons. But one is that we may feel a sense of duty or guilt, especially if the tenant is a person we care about. So, for example, we might think, I can't stop thinking about my family problems because it's my responsibility to fix them. And often you find people feeling that they have to, especially if they're a people pleaser or they come from a dysfunctional background where they were the peacekeeper, and then they get into real life and they're always peacekeeping and like kind of juggling all these balls. And if I don't juggle all the balls and I let them drop, everything's going to collapse around for them, he, she, them and me. And then it's all going to be a mess. So I have to keep going. So again, these people are all in your headspace, taking up room and also controlling your behaviors without even knowing that they're doing it. Sometimes it's realizing that giving other people enough credit in that kind of scenario that, well, hang on, this is a grown person. They can make their own choices. It's up to them where their life goes. I can't keep trying to save them or prevent the inevitable or keep them from harm. So rather than keep worrying about it, I mean, again, find the balance. When you're raising children, it's a little bit difficult. You want to give them some autonomy, but you're going to worry about them. That's natural. But when it comes to other adults in your life, sometimes we deny them, or we don't even appreciate that they may well have enough ability to be able to solve their own problems. You know, you're moving into kind of the realm of codependency then, and you're always preventing them, fixing them, stopping something bad from happening to them, when actually they might be able to manage to avoid the bad thing by themselves. So they're taking up mental headspace. Another reason is that we might be unconsciously repeating familiar patterns, even if they're harmful, because they are what we know. And according to something like, say, psychodynamic theory, unresolved conflicts from our past can manifest as these persistent thoughts, and we might begin to try to resolve them mentally. For example, if you grow up with a lot of criticism, you may find yourself constantly critiquing your own actions or trying to meet an impossible standard. So you're aiming for perfection all the time. You become your own worst critic. I mean, you could add in here that maybe like Melanie Klein's concept of the paranoid schizoid position also comes into play here. In this position, we tend to split our experiences into good and bad without integrating them. So, and this leads to a fragmented sense of self. This is also referred to in CBT areas as black and white thinking. So it leads to a fragmented sense of self. When we encounter distressing emotions or thoughts, we might label them as bad, and we try to dismiss or invalidate them as a form of self-protection, which can result in kind of like self-gaslighting, as we deny the validity of these bad parts of ourselves. Signs that you might be self-gaslighting or allowing unwanted tenants in your headspace. Do you frequently second-guess yourself? Do you often feel overly responsible for conflicts? Thinking it's always your fault? Do you downplay your achievements? Do you think they're not a big deal? These are all indicators of self-gaslighting. So take a moment to reflect on your behaviors and thoughts. Recognizing these patterns is the first step to overcoming them. And there is a significant, self-gaslighting. Many of us don't need someone else to do it. So self-gaslighting can have a significant impact on our emotional and mental health, because it can lead to anxiety, depression, and definitely a distorted self-image, a distorted sense of self-perception. When we constantly doubt ourselves, we undermine our own confidence and our own self-worth, and this also affects our relationships. So self-gaslighting can create increased conflict and decreased trust, as we might become overly apologetic or defensive. Now, sometimes this can come from other people gaslighting us, and then we would kind of interject that kind of, it's very similar to interjecting the critical voice, and it becomes we become our own worst critic. It's the same kind of thing. If we've experienced someone gaslighting us, sometimes, and it's gone on for long enough and it was abusive, sometimes we can continue that. So we begin to just gaslight ourselves. It's essential to understand that these impacts, in order to motivate us to change. Because if we don't bring it to awareness, if we don't acknowledge that it's there, and we don't acknowledge the harm it's doing to us, we tend not to move towards making some changes and helping ourselves. I've known as well, going back to the unwanted tenants, can be ex-partners. Again, stay in our mind for a long time. And some of this is the natural process of like the grieving process, trying to figure stuff out. And then at some point, sometimes you have to kind of make a conscious effort and go, do you know what? Enough is enough. You know, this is where that kind of, you have to find your own closure comes from. You do have to make a conscious effort to find closure yourself, because sometimes we find ourselves ruminating for a very long time and maybe analysing the other person as well within that relationship. And sometimes I've known people to take up space in someone's head, you know, over like an altercation in the street, or perhaps some incident of road rage or an argument or something like that. And people can ruminate about it for days, and ifs and whats and scenarios, and I should have done this and I should have done that. And in those situations, there's often something in it which made you feel threatened and made you feel inferior. Can be one way of looking at it. It's like, what did it trigger inside of me where I kind of can't let this drop? Is it my ego kicking in? Did they actually, you know, they transcended a boundary, and I'm not sure how to handle the fact that they transcended a boundary. And for some people, they don't even know the name of them. They wouldn't even recognize them again if they saw them. But the situation is playing over and over and over and over again and taking up a lot of headspace. So how do you evict these unwanted tenants from your headspace? I'm going to give you some practical strategies and tips. One of them I've already said, this kind of bringing it to awareness, recognizing that it's there and recognizing how it affects you, and then making that conscious effort. I don't want to have this anymore, and I'm going to start to practice it. So, and you can do this with mindfulness and meditation. Practice mindfulness to become aware of your thoughts without judgment on yourself. Don't gaslight yourself through your meditation. It can help you observe and let go of intrusive thoughts. Techniques such as body scans or guided visualizations can also be pretty effective in helping you to stay grounded in the present moment. And also within that, you know, you can take yourself off on a walk and just like kind of ground yourself out, you know, take your shoes and socks off if you want to, you know, listen to what's around you and kind of say, oh, I can hear the birds, I can hear some cars, I can hear this, I can see that, I can see the other. And that's something you can do to bring you back into the reality of the now. You can also challenge negative thoughts and replace them with some more balanced perspectives. So if you're like constantly worrying about failure, remind yourself of all your past successes. Just because you failed in the past doesn't mean you're going to fail in the future. Things like that. Just because the past was like this doesn't mean the future has to be like this. You can do some cognitive restructuring to help you identify and change distorted thinking patterns. So you can think low of yourself, bad of someone else, bad of yourself, and you can restructure it and maybe just take that objective view, take that helicopter view, that step back, and kind of see, it's like a reality check, see things for what they are. You can set some boundaries. I recommend this for everybody. Always set boundaries. Write them down again, you know, see what they, and kind of, why do I need this boundary? What does this boundary bring me? So establish some mental and emotional boundaries. Decide which thoughts and influences you want to allow into your mind, and visualize a gatekeeper at the entrance of your headspace, if you like, who only lets in positive and constructive thoughts. So this could be like a powerful mental exercise for you to help maintain control over your mental environment. You can also go to see a therapist and work through some unresolved issues. You can also say if there is a lack of closure on a relationship, whether it's family, romantic, friendship, something like that, you can work through this kind of unresolved issue and find closure with it to stop them occupying headspace. Gestalt therapy can really help you confront and integrate these thoughts, reducing their hold on your mind. Gestalt's really good for this, because a lot of this is we take objective things from reality and we build subjectively onto them. So a lot of it's manifestation of our own imagination that we are actually working with. So you can actually take a scenario or a person or a situation and you begin to build on it with your own imagination whilst you're ruminating, whilst it's going round and round in your head with the overthinking. Thus, they're taking up more and more space, hence doing some reality checks on it. You could practice some self-compassion and be kind to yourself and acknowledge that it's actually okay to have these thoughts and have them go around, but, you know, try to tell yourself, you know, okay, it's there, but I'm not going to get carried down the river by it. I'm not going to like let this drain all of my energy, because actually they're not paying rent in my headspace. It's not paying rent in my headspace. It doesn't deserve to be there. You can write yourself some letters about this. You can do monkey mind journals to help empty out your head. And maybe you could even write a kind letter to yourself if you wanted. So the main thing with this is to acknowledge that it's happening, and then acknowledge that they don't need to be there. They're not paying any rent, so therefore they don't need to be in your head. So then you can then work on techniques to clear this space out, just like you would, a tenant not paying rent and causing you a lot of problems in your own house or something like that. You would be like, okay, you need to collect your stuff and you need to go. This is finished now. This does not work. And it's the same. It's being kind to yourself. Like, this is not working for me. These people don't need to be in there. Why are they still in there? And yes, there is a process time for stuff. I'm not saying I'm not trying to do don't want to move into the realms of toxic positivity and get everybody out of your head and deny yourself human emotions such as sadness, frustration, anger, resentment, things like that. These are all part of being the human experience. But there is a point where it goes on too long and you begin to get carried down the river by them. And then these, like I say, they're carrying on in your head all the time. They're taking up all this space. The person, the conflict, the situation, what happened then, what happened there. And some of these people who occupy other people's heads, they don't even know them. It's triggering something in you. So it's recognizing that it's doing that, finding out what it is, and then taking steps to counter that, diffuse that, get rid of that, transcend it. And part of that is actually by having a good chat with yourself, if you like, and going, why are they in there? Do I really need them in there? Is there any more kind of closure that I'm going to get by keeping this open? Or is there any more? Do I really need to keep being angry about somebody who was rude to me in a shop 3 days ago, and this is still bothering me and keeping me up at night? What I should have said, what I shouldn't have said, because often we can feel a bit depowered by stuff. And then it triggers our ego, and then we go round and round it. So, really looking at it. But ultimately, I think it's the one, it's like some people I know physically kind of flick people away. You know what? No, out. You're not paying rent. Get the fuck out of my head. They do stuff like that. So it's like sometimes we can do that. And write letters, send it to the wind, bury it, burn it, thanks very much. Other people do kind of talk to the moon or the trees or nature or whatever. They kind of do like a little mantra, and they kind of go, okay, I'm going to take back what's mine. I'm going to give forth and discard what is not mine. And they kind of empty themselves out that way, or they have a shower and they, visualize it all going away. There are so many different techniques. But like I said, the first one is recognizing it's happening, acknowledging what it's doing to you, and then making that conscious effort to change it and kick those unwanted tenants out of your headspace to free the space up for something that's more beneficial to you. I hope that helps. It was a brief overview, and until I see you next time, please take very good care of yourselves. Adios.